The warning lights painted the bridge of the UES Nightborne in shades of red and amber. Captain Jake Morrison stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the tactical display as it counted down the final minutes before they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Around him, his crew moved with quiet efficiency, their faces set with determination. They all knew what waited for them at the end of this jump. They all knew they might not be coming home. The ship hummed beneath his feet, a steady vibration that Morrison had grown to love over the past 2 years. The Nightborne was not a beautiful vessel by any measure. She was massive, angular, and covered in armor plating that made her look like a flying fortress. The aliens in the Galactic Council called human ships ugly and primitive. They said humans built their vessels like hammers instead of surgical tools. Morrison had always smiled at that comparison. Sometimes the galaxy needed a hammer. Lieutenant Ben Carter looked up from his console, his young face serious. "Captain, we're 30 seconds from destination. All weapon systems are online and ready. Shield generators at full power." Morrison nodded. "Sound general quarters? All crew to battle stations." The alarm rang through the ship, a sound that every man and woman aboard had been trained to respond to instantly. In the corridors and compartments of the Nightborne, 3,000 people rushed to their posts. In the engine rooms, the reactors thrummed with barely controlled power. In the weapons bays, crews loaded railgun ammunition and armed missile tubes. In the medical sections, doctors and nurses prepared for casualties that everyone hoped would not come but knew were likely. Commander Lisa Hayes stepped up beside Morrison. She had been his second in command for 3 years, and he trusted her judgment more than anyone else in the fleet. "Sir, are you sure about this?" "We're going in alone. The Council specifically ordered us to wait for reinforcements." Morrison looked at her, his expression hard. "The Council has been waiting and debating for 3 years while the Vraxians burned colonies and enslaved innocent people. How many more need to die while politicians argue about proper procedures?" Lisa did not argue. She had seen the same intelligence reports he had. The mining colony at Helios Prime held 20,000 civilians from a dozen different species. The Vraxians had invaded 2 weeks ago and were systematically processing the population for slave labor. Children were being separated from their families. Anyone who resisted was executed. The Galactic Council had called for sanctions and diplomatic pressure. Humanity had decided that was not enough. 10 seconds, Ben announced. Morrison straightened his uniform. "Weapons free the moment we arrive. Target their command ships first. I want them confused and scattered before they can coordinate a response." The countdown reached 0, and the universe twisted around them. The Nightborne dropped into normal space at the edge of the Helios system, and immediately every sensor on the bridge screamed warnings. The Vraxian fleet was massive. 12 heavy cruisers hung in formation around the planet, each one bristling with plasma cannons and energy shields. Around them, smaller destroyers and frigates patrolled in careful patterns. Morrison counted 47 enemy ships in total. On the Vraxian flagship, Admiral Kralvex was reviewing casualty reports from the planet's surface when his sensors officer let out a startled hiss. "Admiral, we have a contact. Single-vessel human design. It just appeared at the system's edge." Kralvex's 6 eyes narrowed. "One ship?" The foolish mammals had sent one ship against his entire armada. He had heard rumors about human arrogance, but this was beyond comprehension. "All vessels, combat formation. Prepare to destroy the intruder. This will be an excellent opportunity to demonstrate to the Council what happens to those who defy the Dominion." He never got the chance to give another order. The Nightborne's railguns spoke first. 20 massive magnetic accelerators, each one capable of launching a solid metal slug at tremendous speed, fired in perfect synchronization. The projectiles crossed the distance between the human ship and the Vraxian fleet in seconds. There was no warning, no chance to evade. 3 Vraxian destroyers simply exploded, torn apart by impacts that released more energy than nuclear weapons. The shockwaves from the explosions buffeted nearby ships, disrupting their formations. "Missile tubes 1 through 20, fire," Morrison ordered. The Nightborne's hull split open in dozens of places as missile pods deployed. 300 missiles launched simultaneously, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. These were not the slow, easily intercepted torpedoes that other species used. Human missiles were fast, maneuverable, and equipped with advanced targeting systems that made them nearly impossible to stop. On the Vraxian flagship, chaos erupted. Evasive maneuvers, Kralvek shouted. Point defense systems, engage those missiles. The Vraxian point defense tried. Energy beams lanced out, attempting to shoot down the incoming swarm. But human missiles did not fly in predictable patterns. They jinked and weaved, split apart into multiple warheads, and used electronic countermeasures that confused the Vraxian targeting computers. 70% of the missiles reached their targets. Nuclear fire bloomed across the Vraxian formation. 16 more ships died in the opening salvo. Morrison watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Helm, bring us about, close to effective railgun range. Target their heavy cruisers. The helmsman, a calm woman named Sally Brooks, did not hesitate. The Nightborne pivoted with startling speed for a ship her size, her thrusters firing in precise bursts. The maneuver brought them directly toward the heart of the Vraxian fleet, a move that no sane captain should have attempted. But Morrison was not interested in being sane. He was interested in winning. The Vraxian heavy cruisers opened fire, their plasma cannons launching bolts of superheated gas that could vaporize lesser ships. The first salvo hit the Nightborne's shields and the entire vessel shuddered. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as the shield generators strained under the assault. Shields at 60%, reported the tactical officer, hull integrity holding. Morrison's jaw tightened. Return fire. All weapons, the Nightborne unleashed hell. Her railguns fired continuously, each shot precisely targeted. Her missiles came in wave after wave, overwhelming the Vraxian defenses. Her laser batteries, designed to destroy incoming projectiles, were turned on Vraxian fighters that tried to strafe her hull. The human ship fought with a ferocity that shocked the aliens, a relentless aggression that gave them no time to breathe or regroup. A Vraxian heavy cruiser tried to ram the Nightborne, its captain desperate to stop the human assault. Morrison saw it coming. Helm, starboard full. Roll ship 90 degrees. The Nightborne twisted in space and the Vraxian cruiser passed beneath them. As it did, Morrison smiled coldly. Fire all ventral railguns. Point-blank range. 10 railgun slugs hammered into the Vraxian ship's upper hull at a range of less than a kilometer. The cruiser's armor, designed to withstand energy weapons, might as well have been paper. The kinetic impacts tore through the ship from top to bottom, and it broke apart in a cascade of explosions. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kralvex watched his fleet die around him. This was impossible. Humans were supposed to be weak, their technology primitive compared to the advanced civilizations of the Dominion, but this ship, this single human warship, was carving through his forces like they were nothing. Retreat, he finally ordered, his pride swallowing in the face of annihilation. All ships scatter and retreat. But human weapons had one more surprise. As the Vraxian ships tried to activate their faster-than-light drives, they found their systems disabled. The Nightborne was broadcasting a quantum jamming field, something the Vraxians did not even know was possible. They could not run. They could only die or surrender. Morrison opened a channel to the Vraxian flagship. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Nightborne. You have one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons, evacuate the colony, and prepare to be taken into custody. You have 60 seconds to comply. Kralvex stared at the transmission in disbelief. You are one ship. Even if you destroy us, the Dominion will send 100 more to avenge us. Morrison's expression did not change. Then we will destroy those too. 50 seconds. The Vraxian admiral looked around his ruined bridge. Half his fleet was gone. The human ship showed damage but was still fully operational. He had no options left. We surrender, Morrison nodded. Smart choice. Cease fire. All weapons hold. The Battle of Helios Prime was over. A single human warship had defeated an entire Vraxian armada, and across the galaxy, civilizations that had dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers suddenly realized they had made a terrible miscalculation. The humans were not weak. They were not to be underestimated, and they had just announced their arrival on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. The battle had ended, but the work was far from over. Captain Morrison stood in the Nightborne's command center, watching as damage control teams rushed through the corridors. The ship had taken a beating. Plasma burns scarred her hull. Several compartments were exposed to vacuum and one of her main reactors was running at reduced capacity. But she was alive, and more importantly, so were most of her crew. Commander Lisa Hayes approached with a datapad, her uniform torn and stained with hydraulic fluid. She had been in engineering when a plasma bolt had punched through the outer hull, and she had personally helped seal the breach. Damage report is complete, sir. We have hull breaches on deck 7 through 12. Reactor 3 is offline and will need repairs we cannot do in the field. We have lost 30% of our point defense grid and 2 of our railgun batteries are damaged beyond repair. Morrison listened carefully, his face grave. Casualties? Lisa's expression tightened. 83 dead, 207 wounded. Medical bay is overwhelmed. Dr. Graham is requesting additional supplies from the planet's surface if any survived the Vraxian occupation. 83 people. 83 men and women who had followed his orders into battle and would never see home again. Morrison felt the weight of each loss, but he could not let it paralyze him. There would be time to grieve later. Right now, 20,000 civilians on the planet below needed help. Send a message to the colony. Tell them we are here to assist. Have our shuttles begin evacuation of any wounded civilians and bring up medical supplies if they have any to spare. Ben Carter spoke up from his station. Captain, we are receiving multiple transmissions from the planet. The colonists they are cheering, sir. They are calling us heroes. Morrison did not feel like a hero. He felt tired and old even though he was only 42. Acknowledge their messages. Tell them help is on the way, and get me a secure channel to Earth. Command needs to know what happened here. The transmission to Earth took several minutes to establish. When Admiral Patricia Kane's face appeared on the screen, she looked worried. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been Morrison's mentor when he was a young officer, and she had recommended him for command of the Nightborne. Jake, what have you done? We are getting reports from all over the sector. The Vraxian fleet at Helios Prime has been destroyed. Please tell me you did not engage them alone. Morrison met her gaze steadily. I engaged them alone, Admiral. They were processing civilians for slave labor. Children were being separated from their families. I made the call to intervene. Kane closed her eyes for a moment, and Morrison could see her mentally preparing for the political storm that was about to hit. The Galactic Council is going insane. They are saying you violated treaty obligations. They are calling it an act of war without authorization. The Vraxian ambassador is demanding your immediate arrest and execution. The Vraxians were committing genocide, Admiral. The Council was debating sanctions while people died. Someone had to act. Kane's expression softened slightly. I know, Jake, I am not saying you were wrong. I am saying you just changed everything. The Council has spent 300 years building a system based on careful diplomacy and measured responses. You just showed them that system does not work when facing an enemy that does not care about rules. Half the Council members are terrified of you right now. The other half are terrified of what you represent. Morrison leaned back in his chair. What I represent? I represent people who are tired of watching innocents suffer while bureaucrats argue about proper procedure. Exactly, Kane said, and that terrifies them. But here is the thing, Jake. You also gave humanity a voice we have never had before. For 3 years, we have been the newest members of the Council. The junior partners that everyone tolerates but nobody respects. You just earned respect even if it comes mixed with fear. The transmission flickered as interference crossed the channel. When it stabilized, Kane's expression had changed to something resembling pride. The Vraxian Dominion is mobilizing its full fleet. They are calling for your head. The Council is threatening to revoke our membership, and the Senate is having emergency sessions to decide whether to court-martial you or give you a medal. Morrison absorbed this information. What do you think is going to happen, Admiral? Kane smiled slightly. I think humanity just announced to the galaxy that we are not going to sit quietly while evil happens. I think every enslaved species out there just learned that someone is willing to fight for them. And I think the Vraxians are about to learn why you do not mess with humans. She paused. Hold position at Helios Prime. A relief fleet is being assembled. The U.S. Defiant, U.S. Relentless, and U.S. Valkyrie will join you within 2 weeks. You are being promoted to Commodore effective immediately. Your orders are to take the fight to the Vraxians and show them what happens when they threaten the innocent. The transmission ended, and Morrison sat in silence for a moment. Commodore. A fleet command. The authorization to continue the fight. It was more than he had expected, but less than what was needed. 4 ships against the entire Vraxian Dominion. The odds were impossible. He had faced impossible odds before. Morrison stood and walked to the bridge windows, looking out at the planet below. Helios Prime was a beautiful world, with blue oceans and green continents visible even from orbit. Somewhere down there, 20,000 people were alive because his crew had been willing to fight. That made everything worth it. Lieutenant Amy Russell, the communications officer, interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the surface. It is from the colony's administrator. She wants to speak with you personally." Morrison returned to his command chair. "Put her through." The screen showed a middle-aged alien woman with pale blue skin and 4 arms. She was a Centauri, one of the more peaceful species in the galaxy. Her name was Keela, and she looked exhausted but grateful. "Captain Morrison, I am Keela Venn, administrator of Helios Prime Colony. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did today. The Vraxians were going to ship us off-world tomorrow. They were going to separate the children from their parents. You saved us all." Morrison felt uncomfortable with her gratitude. "We did what anyone should have done, Administrator Van." Kayla's expression turned sad. "But nobody else did, Captain. The Council knew what was happening here. We sent them requests for help every day for 2 weeks. They sent us messages about sanctions and diplomatic pressure. They told us to be patient while our children were taken from us. You were the only ones who came." Those words hit Morrison harder than any weapon. The Council had known. They had known and done nothing. "How many did the Vraxians kill before we arrived?" 143, Kayla said quietly. "They executed anyone who resisted. Anyone who tried to hide their children. They made examples of them." She wiped her eyes with one of her 4 hands. "My husband was one of them. He tried to stop them from taking our daughter. They shot him in front of everyone." Morrison felt cold fury building in his chest. "Where is your daughter now?" "Safe, thanks to you. She is in the shelter with the other children. She keeps asking when her father is coming back. I do not know how to tell her he never will." Kayla looked directly at Morrison. "The people here want you to know something, Captain. We do not care what the Council says about you. We do not care about their treaties or their rules. You are heroes to us, all of you." After the transmission ended, Morrison sat silently. Lisa came to stand beside him. "Sir, the crew is asking when we can get back to repairs. They want to be ready in case the Vraxians send more ships." Morrison looked at his second in command. "Lisa, did we do the right thing? 83 of our people are dead. We have started what might become a full-scale war. The Council wants to arrest me. Did we make the right choice?" Lisa did not hesitate. "Yes, sir. We saved 20,000 innocent people from slavery and death. We showed the galaxy that humanity will not stand by while evil happens, and we gave hope to every oppressed species out there, that someone is finally willing to fight for them. That is worth the price, even if it is a heavy one." Morrison nodded slowly. She was right. The cost had been terrible, but the alternative would have been worse. To stand by and do nothing, to let innocent people suffer while following rules that protected only the comfortable and powerful, that was not something he could live with. "Get the crew started on repairs," he ordered, "and prepare a memorial service for our fallen. They deserve to be honored." As Lisa left to carry out his orders, Morrison looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vraxian Dominion was preparing for war. They would send their fleets, their warriors, their best weapons. They would come seeking revenge for their defeat here today. Morrison found himself almost looking forward to it. Humanity had spent 3 years playing by the galaxy's rules, being polite and diplomatic and careful not to offend anyone. That time was over. The Vraxians wanted war, and humanity would give them one they would never forget. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Helios Prime, and Jake Morrison found himself standing in front of the Senate Armed Services Committee on Earth. The room was packed with senators, military officials, and reporters who had been barred from bringing cameras, but would no doubt leak every word of the proceedings to the press. Morrison wore his dress uniform, the new insignia of a Commodore gleaming on his shoulders. He felt more comfortable on the bridge of a warship than in this political arena. But orders were orders. Senator George Palmer, the committee chairman, was an old man with white hair and a reputation for being tough on military spending. He looked at Morrison with an expression that might have been admiration or might have been suspicion. "Commodore Morrison, you stand here today because your actions at Helios Prime have created a crisis. The Galactic Council is threatening to expel humanity from their alliance. The Vraxian Dominion has declared you a war criminal and is demanding your extradition, and half the civilized galaxy is accusing us of warmongering. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Morrison looked around the room at the assembled politicians. Some looked hostile. Some looked supportive. Most just looked worried about how this would affect their careers. Senator, I have no defense to offer because I do not believe I committed any crime. 20,000 innocent civilians were being processed for slavery. The Galactic Council knew about it and chose to do nothing. I chose to act. If that makes me a criminal, then I am guilty. Senator Martha Cole, a younger woman known for her progressive views, leaned forward. Commodore, are you saying the Council was aware of the situation and deliberately chose not to intervene? That is exactly what I am saying, Senator. We intercepted their communications. The Council received daily reports from Helios Prime detailing the atrocities being committed there. They debated sanctions for 2 weeks while people died. I presented this evidence to my commanding officer, Admiral Kane, and she gave me discretionary authority to act. Senator Palmer's eyes narrowed. Discretionary authority that you immediately used to start a war. No, sir, Morrison corrected him. I used it to end a massacre. The Vraxians started the war when they invaded Helios Prime. I simply showed them there would be consequences for their actions. The hearing went on for 3 hours. Senators asked about casualty figures, ship damage, the political ramifications, and whether Morrison had considered the broader consequences of his actions. Through it all, Morrison remained calm and direct. He had made his choice, and he would stand by it regardless of what these politicians decided. Finally, Senator Palmer called for a recess. As Morrison stood to leave, Admiral Kane approached him in the hallway outside the hearing room. You did well in there, Jake. You did not let them rattle you. Morrison loosened his collar. I told the truth, Admiral. That is all I can do. Kane smiled. The truth is a powerful weapon in politics, even if politicians hate dealing with it. Come with me. There is someone who wants to meet you. She led him to a private office in the Senate building. Inside, a tall man in an expensive suit was waiting. He was perhaps 50 years old, with graying hair and the confident bearing of someone used to power. Commodore Morrison, I am Secretary of Defense Richard Blake. Please sit down. Morrison sat, wondering what was coming next. Blake poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to Morrison. Commodore, I am going to be direct with you. What you did at Helios Prime has caused a political earthquake. The Council is furious. The Vraxians want your head, and every member state of the Council is now questioning whether the existing system for handling crises actually works. Does it work, sir? Morrison asked. Blake laughed. No, it does not. Not when you are dealing with aggressors who do not care about diplomatic pressure. The Council system was designed for conflicts between civilized nations who share common values. It falls apart completely when facing an enemy like the Vraxians who see diplomacy as weakness. He took a sip of water. But here is the interesting part. After your battle at Helios Prime, 7 different species have formally requested human military assistance to defend their colonies from Vraxian aggression. 7 species that previously would not have given us the time of day are now begging for our protection. Morrison absorbed this information because they saw we were willing to fight. Exactly. You changed the calculation, Commodore. Before Helios Prime, humanity was seen as the new kids on the block, too primitive to matter. Now we are seen as the ones who actually do something when innocent people are threatened. That gives us leverage we have never had before. Blake stood and walked to the window overlooking the Capitol building. The President has authorized the formation of a new fleet. 4 dreadnoughts, 12 cruisers, 40 destroyers, and all the support ships needed to sustain extended operations. You will command this fleet with orders to engage and destroy Vraxian forces wherever you find them. The official mission is to protect human colonies and allied species from aggression. The unofficial mission is to show the galaxy that humanity is now a major player, and we will not be pushed around. Morrison felt a mix of pride and trepidation. A full fleet, real authorization to fight, but also the weight of commanding thousands of lives in a war that could reshape galactic politics. Sir, the Vraxians will not take this lying down. They will send everything they have against us. Good, Blake said with a cold smile. Let them come. You have shown us their ships and tactics are not as advanced as we feared. Our weapons work. Our ships can take punishment and keep fighting. And our crews have something the Vraxians do not have. What is that, sir? They are fighting for something they believe in. The Vraxians fight for conquest and glory. Our people fight to protect the innocent. That makes all the difference. After leaving the meeting, Morrison returned to his apartment in the city. It was a small place he barely used, mostly filled with books and mementos from his years in the service. He sat on the couch and stared at the wall, thinking about what was coming. His phone rang. It was Lisa Hayes. "Sir, I know you are supposed to be on leave, but I thought you should know. The crew of the Nightborne has submitted a formal request to remain under your command for the new fleet operations. All 3,000 of them. Even the wounded who are still recovering want to come back." Morrison felt emotion tighten his throat. Why would they do that? They have seen what combat is like. They have lost friends. They could request transfers to safer assignments. Lisa's voice was warm. "Because they believe in what we did, sir. Because they want to fight for something that matters. And because you led them through hell and brought most of them home. That kind of leadership inspires loyalty." After hanging up, Morrison walked to his bookshelf and pulled out an old photo. It showed a younger version of himself standing with his first crew, back when he was just a lieutenant on a patrol ship. They had all been so young then, so naive about what military service really meant. Some of those people in the photo were dead now, killed in various actions over the years, but they had all believed in something bigger than themselves. He placed the photo back on the shelf and made a decision. He would take command of the new fleet. He would lead them against the Vraxians, and he would show the galaxy that humanity would not stand by while evil prospered. The cost would be high, more people would die, but the alternative was to let innocents suffer while hiding behind rules that only protected the powerful. That night, Morrison could not sleep. He kept thinking about Kayla Van, the Centauri administrator who had lost her husband. He thought about her daughter, who would grow up without a father. He thought about the 143 colonists who had been executed before the Nightborne arrived. And he thought about the 83 crew members who had died following his orders. All of those deaths mattered. All of those lives had value. And if he could prevent future deaths by taking action now, then the risk was worth it. 2 days later, Morrison returned to space. The Nightborne had been repaired and refitted, her damaged systems replaced and her weapons upgraded. 3 other dreadnoughts joined her in orbit: the Defiant, the Relentless, and the Valkyrie. Each was crewed by volunteers who knew the dangers ahead but chose to serve anyway. As Morrison took his seat in the Nightborne's command chair, he felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This was where he belonged, not in committee hearings or political meetings, but here among his crew, preparing to face the enemy. Lisa Hayes stood beside him, reviewing the fleet roster. "All ships report ready for departure, Commodore." "The crew is eager to get started," Morrison nodded. "Then let us not keep them waiting. Helm, set course for the Vraxian border. It is time to show them what happens when you threaten the innocent." The 4 massive warships turned as one and accelerated toward the stars, leaving Earth behind. Across the galaxy, the Vraxian Dominion prepared for war, confident in their superior numbers and long military tradition. They had no idea what was coming for them. The human fleet had been hunting for 2 weeks when they found their first major target. The Vraxian supply depot at Kuron Station was supposed to be a minor facility, but intelligence reports suggested otherwise. Commodore Morrison studied the reconnaissance data on his tactical display, noting the unusual number of ships coming and going. Something important was happening here. Lieutenant Ben Carter enhanced the sensor image, bringing the station into sharper focus. It was massive, easily 5 kilometers across, with docking ports for hundreds of ships. "Sir, I am counting 63 Vraxian vessels in the area. 22 are military escorts, the rest appear to be cargo haulers. They are loading something onto those transports." Commander Lisa Hayes pulled up additional data. "Our intelligence network on the planet below sent a coded message 2 hours ago. The Vraxians are evacuating slave workers from the surface. They are moving them deeper into Dominion space, probably in response to our actions at Helios Prime." Morrison felt cold anger settle in his gut. The Vraxians were not giving up their slaves. They were just moving them where humanity could not reach them. How many slaves are we talking about? Estimates suggest between 50 and 80,000 people from multiple species. They have been working the mining operations on Kuron 4 for the past year. Conditions are reportedly brutal. Lisa paused. "Sir, if we hit that station, a lot of those slaves could be killed in the crossfire." It was the kind of impossible choice that Morrison hated. Attack and risk killing the people they were trying to save, or let the Vraxians move them to a location where rescue might be impossible. He looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. "Get me Captain Helen Cruz on the Defiant," he ordered. Captain Cruz appeared on the screen within seconds. She was a sharp woman in her early 40s with short black hair and a reputation for tactical brilliance. Commodore, I have been reviewing the same data. This is going to be a tough one. Morrison nodded. Helen, I need your ship in the Relentless to create a distraction. Draw off those military escorts. Make them think you are the main attack force. Meanwhile, the Nightborne and the Valkyrie will hit the station directly and disable their systems without destroying the cargo ships holding the slaves. Cruz considered this for a moment. That means we will be outnumbered 2-1 while you make your attack run. We can handle it, but we will take damage. I know, but if we do this right, we can save those people and hurt the Vraxian supply lines at the same time. Are you in? Cruz smiled grimly. Always. Defiant out. The attack began 30 minutes later. The Defiant and the Relentless dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, their weapons hot and their shields at maximum. The Vraxian escorts reacted immediately, breaking formation to intercept what they assumed was the entire human fleet. Captain Cruz stood on her bridge, watching the enemy ships accelerate toward her position. All weapons prepare to fire. Let us make them angry enough to commit everything they have. The Defiant's railguns opened up, sending solid slugs screaming across the void. A Vraxian destroyer exploded, then another. The Relentless added her firepower to the barrage, and suddenly 3 more enemy ships were burning. The Vraxian commander, seeing his forces being torn apart, committed his entire escort fleet to destroying these 2 human ships. That was exactly what Morrison had been waiting for. The Nightborne and the Valkyrie emerged from faster-than-light travel on the opposite side of the station, their approach masked by the station's own mass. Before the Vraxians knew what was happening, both human dreadnoughts were firing, but these were not the devastating kinetic strikes that had torn apart the fleet at Helios Prime. These were precision shots, carefully aimed at the station's power generators, shield emitters, and communication arrays. Morrison needed the station intact and the slave ships undamaged. Target their reactor complex, Morrison ordered. Disable, do not destroy. The Nightborne's gunners were some of the best in the fleet. Their railgun shots hit with pinpoint accuracy, smashing the station's power core and sending cascading failures through its systems. Within minutes, the massive facility went dark, its weapons offline and its shields collapsed. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Captain Kyle Norton coordinated with his Marine commander. Major Clark, your teams are cleared aboard. Secure those cargo ships and get those slaves to safety. Major Scott Clark was already suited up in combat armor when he got the order. He led 300 Marines onto assault shuttles that launched from the Valkyrie's hangar bays. The small craft screamed across the gap between the warship and the station, their armor-proof against the sporadic small arms fire coming from the damaged facility. The Marines hit the station hard. They breached through docking ports and cargo bays, moving in disciplined teams that had trained for exactly this kind of operation. The Vraxian station guards tried to fight back, but they were not prepared for human close-quarters combat tactics. Within an hour, Major Clark had secured the cargo ships holding the slaves. Commodore Morrison, this is Major Clark. We have control of the transport vessels. You need to see this, sir. The conditions these people are living in, it is worse than we thought. Morrison pulled up the video feed from Clark's helmet camera and felt his stomach turn. The cargo holds were packed with people from a dozen different species, crammed together in spaces meant for freight, not living beings. They were thin, dirty, and many showed signs of abuse. Children clung to their parents, their eyes wide with fear. Get them medical attention, Morrison ordered, his voice tight with controlled rage. And find whoever was in charge of this station. I want them in custody. On the other side of the system, the battle was not going well for Captain Cruz. The Defiant had taken multiple hits, her shields flickering under sustained plasma fire. Several of her weapon systems were offline, and she had casualties across multiple decks, but she had done her job. Every single Vraxian escort ship was focused on her and the Relentless, leaving the station vulnerable. Captain Cruz, this is Morrison. You can break off now. The station is secure and we have the slaves. Get your ships out of there. Cruz was breathing hard, a cut above her eye bleeding down her face. Acknowledged, Commodore. All ships prepare for emergency jump. We are leaving. The Defiant and Relentless activated their faster-than-light drives and vanished, leaving the Vraxian escorts to realize they had been outmaneuvered. By the time the enemy ships turned back toward the station, the Nightborne and Valkyrie had already begun evacuating the freed slaves onto their own ships. Morrison walked through the Nightborne's hangar bay, watching as medical teams worked on the rescued people. A young girl, maybe 8 years old and belonging to a species he did not recognize, looked up at him with huge eyes. She said something in her own language that his translator picked up. "Are you the humans? The ones who fight for others?" Morrison knelt down to her level. "Yes, we are. You are safe now. We are going to take you somewhere the Vraxians cannot hurt you anymore." The girl threw her arms around his neck, and Morrison felt something break inside him. This was why they fought, not for glory or conquest, but for moments like this, for children who deserved to grow up free from fear and slavery. Lisa Hayes approached, her expression serious. "Sir, we have a problem. The Vraxian commander from the station wants to negotiate. He is offering information about Dominion military positions in exchange for his life." Morrison stood, gently releasing the child to her mother's care. "Take me to him." The Vraxian commander was being held in the brig, his scales bruised and one of his 6 eyes swollen shut from when the Marines had subdued him. He looked up as Morrison entered, his expression a mix of fear and calculation. "You are Morrison, the human who destroyed our fleet at Helios Prime. I have information that could help you. Strategic positions, fleet movements, supply routes. All I ask in return is my life and safe passage." Morrison looked at this creature who had overseen the suffering of 80,000 people. "What you ask for is mercy you never showed your prisoners. Why should I grant it?" "Because you are not like us," the Vraxian said. "You humans have this strange obsession with honor and fairness. You think it makes you superior. That weakness is why you will eventually lose this war." Morrison leaned closer. "You think mercy is weakness? Let me tell you what happens next. You will give us all the information you have. Every detail. Then you will stand trial for crimes against sentient beings. If you are found guilty, and you will be, you will spend the rest of your life in prison. That is not mercy. That is justice. And justice is what separates us from monsters like you." The Vraxian blinked in confusion. "You are not going to execute me?" "No, death would be too easy. You are going to live with what you have done." After leaving the brig, Morrison returned to the bridge. The fleet was preparing to leave the system, their holds full of freed slaves who needed medical care and rehabilitation. It was a victory, but Morrison knew it was only a small one. The Vraxian Dominion controlled hundreds of systems. They had millions of slaves working in terrible conditions. 4 human ships could not save them all, but they could try. And in trying, they could show the galaxy that someone cared about the suffering of innocents. The officers of the human fleet gathered in the conference room aboard the Nightborne. Commodore Morrison sat at the head of the table, looking at the faces of the people he was about to ask to do the impossible. Captain Helen Cruz from the Defiant, Captain Kyle Norton from the Valkyrie, and Captain Roger Chen from the Relentless. Commander Lisa Hayes represented the Nightborne's senior staff. Morrison activated the holographic display, and a star system appeared in the air above the table. "This is the Nexus. According to our intelligence, it is the most heavily fortified system in Vraxian space. They have been building defenses there for 3,000 years. It has never fallen." Helen Cruz leaned forward, studying the display. "And now they are gathering their entire fleet there. How many ships are we talking about?" "Over 300 capital ships, maybe 600 smaller vessels, against our 4 dreadnoughts." Morrison let that sink in for a moment. "Admiral Kane has ordered us to fall back to Earth and prepare for defense." "That is the smart move. The safe move." Kyle Norton raised an eyebrow. "But you are not going to do that, are you, Commodore?" Morrison shook his head. "If we let them assemble that fleet and hit Earth, millions will die. Our home defenses are good, but they cannot stop that kind of firepower. However, if we strike first, if we hit them at the Nexus while they are still gathering, we might be able to disrupt their plans." Roger Chen, the newest of the captains, looked skeptical. "Sir, even if we catch them by surprise, the numbers are overwhelming. 4 ships against hundreds. We would be destroyed within the first hour of combat." "Not if we fight smart," Morrison replied. He manipulated the display, zooming in on the Nexus station itself. The Vraxians rely heavily on networked communications to coordinate their fleets. All their ships talk to each other constantly, sharing targeting data and tactical information. It is what makes them so effective, but it is also their weakness. Lisa Hayes caught on first. "You want to take out their communications network? Turn their coordination into chaos." "Exactly. We have been developing cyber warfare systems specifically designed to exploit Vraxian network architecture. If we can get close enough to broadcast a quantum disruption signal, We can shut down their entire command and control system. Suddenly, 300 ships become 300 individual vessels with no way to coordinate. Helen Cruz studied the tactical data. It is still terrible odds, but at least it gives us a chance. How close do we need to get to broadcast this signal? Morrison highlighted a point near the center of the Vraxian formation. Right here. In the heart of their fleet. The room fell silent. What Morrison was proposing was suicide by any rational measure. To drive 4 ships into the center of the enemy fleet, surrounded on all sides by hostile vessels, with no hope of retreat or reinforcement. Kyle Norton broke the silence. You know this is insane, right? Even if the disruption works, even if we survive the initial assault, we would be trapped in the middle of their formation with no way out. I know, Morrison said quietly. That is why I am not ordering any of you to come with me. The Nightborne will make the attack run alone if necessary. The rest of you can fall back to Earth and help with the defense there. No one will question your courage or commitment. Helen Cruz laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sir, with all respect, if you think we are letting you have all the glory, you are out of your mind. The Defiant is coming with you. Kyle Norton nodded. The Valkyrie as well. We have come this far together. We are not backing out now. Roger Chen looked at his fellow captains, then back at Morrison. The Relentless is in. Someone needs to keep you all from doing anything too crazy. Morrison felt pride swell in his chest. These people knew the risks. They knew they might not survive. But they were willing to go anyway, because they believed in something bigger than themselves. Then we leave in 6 hours. Go back to your ships. Tell your crews what we are about to do. Anyone who wants to transfer out, let them. No judgment, no questions. But those who stay need to know they might not be coming home. The captains left to return to their vessels. Lisa stayed behind, looking at Morrison with an expression he could not quite read. Jake, be honest with me. What do you think our chances are? Morrison considered lying, considered offering false hope. But Lisa deserved the truth. Maybe 20%. If everything goes perfectly. If every system works exactly as designed. If we get lucky at every turn. 20%, Lisa nodded slowly. I have served with you for 5 years. I've never known you to back down from long odds. But this is different. This is throwing away 4 of humanity's best warships and 12,000 crew members on a desperate gamble. I know, but if we do nothing, if we let them bring that fleet to Earth, the casualties will be in the millions. At least this way we are trading military lives for civilian lives. That is what we signed up for. 6 hours later, the 4 human dreadnoughts jumped into the Nexus system. What they found there was worse than their worst estimates. The Vraxian fleet was not just large. It was overwhelming. Massive dreadnoughts hung in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. Cruisers and destroyers patrolled in careful patterns. And at the center of it all, the Nexus station itself. A fortress that had never fallen in 3 millennia of warfare. On the Vraxian command ship, Admiral Kralvex stared at his displays in disbelief. 4 human ships had just appeared at the edge of his system. 4 ships against his entire armada. The audacity was stunning. All vessels, weapons free. Destroy those ships. But Morrison was already moving. All ships, full acceleration. Head straight for the center of their formation. Weapons free, fire at will. The 4 human dreadnoughts charged forward like ancient cavalry, their railguns blazing. Vraxian ships exploded as kinetic rounds tore through their hulls. Missiles streaked across the void in waves, each one finding its target with deadly accuracy. But for every Vraxian ship that died, 10 more took its place. The Nightborne shuddered as plasma bolts hammered her shields. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. Shields down to 40%, Ben Carter reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Keep us moving forward, Morrison ordered. We need to get to the center of their formation. On the Defiant, Helen Cruz fought her damaged ship through a wall of enemy fire. One of her main reactors was offline, and she had lost 2 of her railgun batteries. But she kept firing, kept moving, kept fighting. All hands, brace for impact! A Vraxian cruiser rammed into the Defiant's side, the collision sending both ships spinning. The cruiser broke apart, but the Defiant was badly damaged. Cruz pulled herself up from where she had been thrown. Damage report! We have lost primary propulsion. Weapons are at 50% capacity. We are venting atmosphere on decks 12 through 18. Her tactical officer paused. Captain, we cannot continue the attack. We are dead in space. Cruz looked at the tactical display. The Nightborne was still pushing forward, still fighting toward the center of the Vraxian fleet. Morrison was counting on her. Transfer all power to weapons. If we cannot move, we can at least keep shooting. Take out as many of them as you can. The Valkyrie and the Relentless pressed forward with the Nightborne, their combined firepower carving a path through the enemy formation. But they were paying for every meter in blood and metal. The Relentless lost her entire starboard weapons array when a plasma torpedo got through her shields. The Valkyrie was burning from a dozen breaches in her hull, and still they pushed forward. Morrison watched the tactical display as the distance to the center of the Vraxian formation slowly decreased. 3 kilometers, 2 kilometers, 1 kilometer. They were close enough now. Lieutenant Russell, activate the quantum disruption signal. Full power. Amy Russell's fingers flew across her console. Signal active, broadcasting on all frequencies. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Vraxian fleet went insane. Every ship suddenly lost connection with every other ship. Targeting systems failed. Navigation computers crashed. Communication channels filled with static. The carefully coordinated armada turned into hundreds of individual vessels with no way to work together. Ships fired on each other by accident. Collision warnings went unheeded as vessels drifted into each other. The precision military machine became a chaotic mess. Morrison allowed himself a small smile. Now all ships target the Nexus station. Concentrate all fire on their command center. Let us finish this. The 3 remaining mobile human ships unleashed everything they had. Railgun rounds, missiles, laser fire, all of it hammered into the massive station. The ancient fortress, which had withstood sieges for 3,000 years, began to break apart under the onslaught. On the Vraxian command ship, Admiral Kralvex watched his perfect fleet fall apart around him. How had this happened? How had 4 human ships destroyed his armada? It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was the end of Vraxian dominance in this sector of space. Admiral, the humans are demanding our surrender, his communications officer reported. Kralvex looked at the tactical display. His fleet was scattered, his coordination destroyed, his fortress crumbling. He had no options left. For the first time in his long military career, he tasted defeat. Signal all ships to stand down. We surrender.